I was petrified about it, by the way. And, we got through it. And I think it was during that time period when I started to think about things.
For decades, Simon Cowell has been known for his unshakable composure, sharp critiques, and near-emotionless presence in the spotlight. But behind the fame and fortune, something deeply personal began to unfold, something no parent is ever prepared for. When news of his son's devastating diagnosis surfaced, it didn't just shake his private world, it quietly changed him. Then came the moment that stunned everyone, an emotional goodbye no one saw coming. So, what really happened in those painful, unseen moments? Let's find out. The truth no parent is ready for. The signs appeared gradually rather than suddenly. Eric showed strong sensitivity to sound, light, crowds, and unfamiliar places, often becoming overwhelmed or withdrawn. Simon initially thought it was normal and temporary, but repeated patterns made it clear it was consistent and meaningful, prompting deeper concern and awareness over time developing. With that awareness came something far more troubling, deep uncertainty. It didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, almost unnoticed. At first, it was a faint presence in the background of his thoughts, but soon it grew stronger, refusing to be ignored. It followed him into every moment of his day and lingered through the quiet of the night. Sleep became difficult. His mind refused to rest, constantly turning over past events again and again. Every word spoken, every reaction given, every small detail became something to examine and question. He searched those memories, hoping they would offer clarity, but they only left him with more questions. Unable to find peace within, he began to look beyond himself. He read endlessly, books, articles, research papers, anything that might help. He asked questions, sought conversations, and reached out for guidance, hoping to find something firm and reassuring to hold on to. But instead of peace, the information brought more questions. Each answer seemed to open another door, leading to more uncertainty, not less. Then came the moment that shifted everything. It happened during what was meant to be a calm, happy family trip, a chance to relax and reconnect. But one evening, surrounded by noise, movement, and activity, Eric became overwhelmed in a way that could no longer be explained away. This time was different. He did not just react, he shut down completely. It was as though he disappeared into himself, unreachable. The world around him had become too much, too loud, too intense. No comfort seemed to reach him. No reassurance seemed to calm him. It was in that moment that something settled in Simon's mind. Not fear exactly, but certainty. This was not something temporary, not something to wait out. This needed understanding, real answers. The journey toward those answers was not immediate. It took months, careful observation, professional assessments, and conversations with specialists. Each step brought them closer, but also deeper into a reality they were still trying to understand. And then, finally, the answer came. Autism spectrum disorder. The words carried weight. They were heavy, undeniable, yet they were not entirely surprising. In many ways, Simon had already felt the truth long before it was spoken aloud. Still, hearing it made everything real in a new way. It gave a name to everything they had been seeing, everything they had been feeling. But alongside that weight, something unexpected emerged. Clarity. Understanding began to replace confusion. Eric was not broken. He was not less than. He was not missing something essential. He was different. His mind worked in a unique, powerful way. He noticed details others overlooked. He could focus deeply, intensely. He experienced the world fully, just not in the same way most people did. And that realization changed everything, because it meant the problem was not Eric. It meant the world around him needed to learn how to meet him where he was. The man who seemed unshakable. For many years, Simon Cowell seemed to live a life that was perfectly arranged, almost like a script that never went wrong. To the public, he was calm, precise, and always in control. Nothing about him suggested uncertainty. Nothing about him hinted at weakness. He appeared to move through life with a kind of certainty that most people only wish they had. Across the world, audiences watched him closely on major shows like American Idol, The X Factor, and Britain's Got Talent. Sitting behind the judge's table, he became known for his sharp words and honest opinions. Contestants feared him, respected him, and often depended on his approval. With just a few sentences, he could lift someone's dream to unimaginable heights or bring it crashing down. And he did it all with a confidence that made it seem effortless. But this confidence did not come from nowhere. Simon had built his entire career on instinct. He had an unusual ability to understand people quickly. He could see potential where others saw nothing. He trusted his decisions completely, rarely second-guessing himself. Doubt was not something he entertained. In his world, things were either right or wrong, and he moved forward without hesitation. His lifestyle reflected this fast-moving mindset. His days were filled with constant activity, traveling across countries, attending meetings, producing shows, and closing massive deals. There was always something demanding his attention. Fame followed him everywhere, but he seemed comfortable in it. The pressure, the spotlight, the endless expectations. He handled it all as if it were simply part of his nature. For a long time, this rhythm defined his life, and it felt complete. In the middle of all this, one thing remained firmly outside his plans: becoming a father. It was not something he avoided out of fear, but rather out of certainty. He believed he knew himself well enough. He saw himself as someone deeply set in his habits, someone who valued independence and control. His life was structured around his work, his choices, and his freedom. The idea of raising a child felt too unpredictable, too demanding, and too different from the life he had carefully built. Even love, as he understood it, had always stayed within limits. It existed, but never in a way that could fully disrupt his priorities. He kept it measured, controlled, something that fit into his life, rather than something that could reshape it entirely. But life does not always respect the boundaries people create for themselves. In 2013, everything began to change. His relationship with Lauren Silverman suddenly became public, attracting intense media attention and controversy. Headlines spread quickly, and the story became a subject of widespread discussion. From the outside, it seemed like just another moment of public drama in the life of a celebrity. Yet beneath all the noise, something much deeper was unfolding, something far more personal and far more powerful than the headlines suggested. A child was coming into his life. At first, it may not have fully registered what this meant. After all, Simon Cowell had spent years believing that fatherhood was not for him. But now, whether he had planned it or not, he was standing at the beginning of a completely new chapter. It was a moment filled with uncertainty, but also with quiet significance. The life he had always known, structured, controlled, predictable, was about to be challenged in ways he had never imagined. Without even realizing it, he was stepping into a transformation that no amount of experience, success, or confidence could have prepared him for. But how did fatherhood transform Simon Cowell's life? What exactly changed about him? Let's find out. The child who changed everything. When Eric Philip Cowell came into the world in February 2014, something shifted inside Simon in a way he had never experienced before. It was sudden and undeniable. There was no slow adjustment, no careful reasoning behind it. It simply happened, deep, instinctive, and impossible to fully explain. Simon had always been known for his sharp mind and clear decisions, especially in business. He was a man who understood outcomes, risks, and strategy. But this was different. This feeling did not follow logic. It came from somewhere much deeper, touching a part of him he had long set aside without even realizing it. The change began the very first moment he saw his son. In fact, it may have started even earlier, when he first looked at the scan and realized that a new life was on the way. Something stirred within him, a quiet awakening, a realization that life was about to become something far greater than success, fame, or achievement. Choosing the name Eric carried a weight of meaning. Naming his son after his late father was not just a respectful gesture. It was something more personal, more emotional. It felt like a bridge between the past and the future, a way of honoring where he came from while shaping what would come next. In that name was a silent promise that his life would now be about more than himself. It would be about legacy, about impact, about what truly remains after everything else fades. At first, the changes in Simon were small, almost unnoticeable to others, but they were real. He began to make different choices. Opportunities that once would have excited him now felt less important if they meant being away from home. His schedule, once packed with meetings and commitments, slowly started to revolve around something new: his son. Simple things began to matter more. Bedtime routines became special moments. Quiet mornings held a kind of peace he had never valued before. Sitting, watching, listening. These became meaningful in ways he had never imagined. He started noticing details he had overlooked for years. The pure sound of a child's laughter. The comfort of just being present. The quiet joy of sharing small, everyday moments. For someone who had spent much of his life chasing big stages, loud applause, and global attention, it was surprising how much fulfillment he now found in the simplest experiences. Yet, within these gentle and beautiful moments, another feeling slowly began to form. It was subtle at first, easy to ignore, easy to push aside, but it lingered. Simon began to notice that Eric was not quite like other children. It wasn't something dramatic or immediately worrying. In fact, it was difficult to even explain clearly. But there were small differences, things that didn't quite fit, moments that stayed in his thoughts longer than expected. As time passed, those observations became harder to dismiss. By the time Eric was nearing his second birthday, one particular detail stood out in a way Simon could no longer ignore. Eric wasn't speaking. Around them, other children their age were beginning to say words, to form simple sentences, to express themselves in ways that showed clear development. But Eric remained mostly quiet. He communicated in other ways, but the absence of speech became more noticeable with each passing day. Simon tried to reassure himself. He told himself what many parents do, that every child grows at their own pace, that delays can happen, and that there was no need to worry too soon. But beneath those comforting thoughts lay a quiet unease. Something didn't feel quite right, and the more he paid attention, the stronger that feeling became. So, what seemed to be the moment that struck him the most? Was he ready for the bitter truth that later emerged? Let's delve into the details of the things Simon never expected. Simon Cowell on judging his own son. In August 2023, Simon Cowell shared something both amusing and slightly nerve-wracking about his young son, Eric. Like many children his age, Eric had developed a new dream, one that was loud, bold, and full of energy. He wanted to become a drummer in a rock band, and even more daringly, audition for Britain's Got Talent. Speaking with Entertainment Tonight, Simon explained Eric's growing fascination with music. The young boy had become particularly fond of the iconic band Green Day, and that admiration seemed to fuel his ambition. For Eric, it was not just about casually playing an instrument, it was about performing, being seen, and stepping onto a stage where dreams are tested in front of millions. Simon, known for his sharp wit and honesty, responded to this idea in a way that blended humor with a hint of parental concern. He joked that of all the challenges he had faced in his long career, this one might be the most difficult. The thought of sitting behind the judge's table while his own son performed was to him both amusing and terrifying. What made it even more intense was Eric's confidence. He did not just want to play the drums, he wanted to drum and sing at the same time. Simon's playful reaction, half joking, half serious, captured the mix of pride and panic many parents feel when their children aim for the spotlight. However, as the weeks passed, Simon's tone shifted slightly. While backstage at America's Got Talent, he spoke again about Eric's musical interest, this time with a more protective edge. He openly admitted that although Eric was genuinely talented, he would actually prefer his son to stay away from the show. Simon praised Eric's ability, noting that the boy had a natural sense of timing and rhythm, qualities that are not always easy to learn. In fact, he expressed relief that Eric had chosen drums instead of a more delicate instrument like the violin, jokingly suggesting that the drums suited him much better. Despite recognizing his son's growing skill, Simon repeatedly advised Eric not to audition. Beneath the humor was a deeper truth. Simon understood the pressures, criticisms, and intense public scrutiny that come with performing on such a massive platform. His words reflected a father's instinct to protect his child from unnecessary stress, even if that child shows promise. It was not about doubting Eric's talent. It was about wanting him to grow, learn, and enjoy his passion without the weight of global judgment. Nearly 2 years later, Eric's love for drumming had not faded. If anything, it had become stronger and more meaningful. In March 2025, during an episode of Britain's Got Talent, Simon found himself reminded of his son in an unexpected and powerful way. After watching a remarkable performance by Cornel Hriska-Munn, a drummer born without arms who delivered an extraordinary display of skill and determination, Simon spoke about Eric once again. He shared that his son would likely watch the performance repeatedly, drawing inspiration from it. In that moment, the conversation was no longer about auditions or fears. It was about the deeper power of music, the way it can inspire, uplift, and connect people across different experiences. For Eric, this performance would not just be entertainment, it would be a lesson in resilience and possibility. Through these glimpses into Simon's life, a touching picture emerges. A father navigating the delicate balance between encouraging his child's dreams and shielding him from the harsh realities of fame. And at the center of it all is a young boy, driven by rhythm, passion, and the simple joy of playing the drums. What sacrifices has Simon vowed to make for Eric? What does Eric's challenge mean for Simon? Let's dig into the details of the emotional farewell that Simon had to make for his son Eric. The goodbye that was really a beginning. The most profound turning point in Simon Cowell's life was not the moment he heard the diagnosis. It was everything that followed after that moment, everything that quietly, steadily reshaped his world. The life he had always known began to shift in ways he could never have predicted. Once his days were fast-paced and full of movement, driven by deadlines, decisions, and constant activity. There was a certain unpredictability he thrived on, a rhythm that matched the energy of his career and public life. But gradually, that way of living started to fall away. In its place came something entirely different. Life became slower, more intentional, and deeply structured. The focus was no longer on the outside world. It narrowed, gently but firmly, to one central figure: Eric. Home itself transformed. It was no longer just a place to rest. It became a carefully designed environment. Every detail mattered. The atmosphere was made calm and predictable. Loud or sudden noises were reduced. Spaces were adjusted to feel safe and comforting. What once seemed ordinary, lighting, sound, arrangement, now carried meaning and purpose. Daily routines also changed. What used to be spontaneous was now planned with care. Therapy sessions became a consistent part of life. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, and guided interactions that required patience and presence. These were not occasional activities, they became the backbone of each day. And with this shift came a new way of measuring progress. Gone were the expectations of big, obvious milestones. Instead, meaning was found in the smallest moments, moments that others might overlook. A single new word spoken after days or weeks of effort. A brief moment of eye contact that felt like a window opening. A quiet connection, subtle yet powerful, that expressed more than words ever could. Each of these moments became a victory. Not loud or dramatic, but deeply significant. They carried a weight that only someone living that reality could truly understand. Yet beyond the physical adjustments and daily routines, the greatest transformation happened within Simon himself. He had to confront a difficult truth. The future he had once imagined would not unfold in the way he expected. The simple, effortless conversations he had pictured, the spontaneous laughter, the easy, familiar father and son experiences he had taken for granted. All of these belonged to a vision he now had to release. Letting go of that imagined future was not easy. It required acceptance, reflection, and emotional strength. But in that space of letting go, something unexpected began to grow. What emerged was not lesser, it was deeper. The bond between father and son was no longer built on words alone. It was shaped by understanding, patience, and quiet effort. It became a connection rooted in presence rather than expectation, in showing up rather than assuming what should be. This kind of love demanded more, but it also gave more. It revealed layers of connection that might never have been discovered otherwise. To the outside world, Simon Cowell still appeared the same, confident, composed, and in control, just as people had always known him to be. His public image did not reflect the depth of the change happening behind the scenes. But beneath that familiar exterior was a man who had made a quiet, powerful transition. He had stepped away from one version of life and embraced another, fully, deliberately, and without hesitation. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And that choice was rooted in love. Because sometimes what feels like an ending is not truly an end. Sometimes it is a quiet beginning, one that leads to a life far richer in meaning, even if it looks different from what was once imagined. So what do you think about how Simon Cowell got transformed by Eric? Do you think Simon should have said goodbye over Eric's challenges? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.